You know,
Are there other survivors?
Hey everybody, welcome to Atheist Impact, episode 8. Today's March 24th, 2013, and I was spending a little bit of time earlier this week trying to figure out where I was 15 years ago. I'm 35 years old as it currently stands, and I thought to myself, if I had a kid, say right now, and like tomorrow I went to the store and picked up a child, which I know that's not how that works, but nonetheless, if I had a kid, I would be 50 by the time the kid was 15. And my dad was in his mid 40s, I want to say, when I turned 18. So every once in a while I compare myself to my dad and where my dad was in his life at specific times. And at 35 he had 3 kids, one of which was 11, the other one was 9, and I think, why was I in 1985? Because my dad was born in 1950, so in 85 I was 7. So I compare myself to my dad very often, actually, and I think, God, I'm so far behind in so many things. And then I remember that my dad didn't really find his calling, his career path, until he was 30. He did a bunch of odd jobs here, there, and yon, and then when he was 30 years old, he finally figured it out and joined the Air Force. And I think a lot of that had to do with probably, I'll need to talk to him about this to actually figure it out a little bit more. I like to think that it's because he looked around in his surroundings and said, this is no way to raise children. My dad's an intelligent person. He's one of those people that eked by in high school and in college and just got just enough just to get by, even though he could do better, which is funny because he used to kind of yell at me for doing the exact same thing in high school. And then I'm sure he was disappointed that I dropped out of college 3 times. But that was my dad. My dad was, let's just do things and get by. But I think that at one point, I think my dad just woke up and he said, I got 3 kids, I've got a wife, and I don't want their world to be this world. And at least not anymore. So we went down to the recruitment office and signed all the papers, and boom, Air Force, here we go. So that was, it was really exciting as a kid. As a young kid, it was really exciting. You got to move to new places, you got to see new, all kinds of things. I consider myself extremely privileged, I suppose, even though I don't like using that word in today's world, since privilege, anyway, we won't get into that. But I was extremely privileged as a child. I spent nearly 6 years of my life, 6 years of my life living in Europe, split between Holland and Sicily, and it was awesome. It was really great. As the years went by, I'll admit that having to change schools every year or 2 or 3 really got to me, and by the time I started in 8th grade at the private Christian school that I went to, I had already gone to, I think, 10 schools. So by 8th grade, I'd already gone through 10 different schools at least, I want to say, just because I think I went to 2 different kindergartens. My birthday happened to be after the cutoff day, so I had to go to a different kindergarten for a while and that kind of stuff. But nonetheless, it was really cool when I was young, but when I got older, I was getting really tired of losing all of my friends. You would, even though it was petty, stupid little relationships when you were 12 years old, but, you had to leave your girlfriend behind. And, it's like my first kiss, and I had my first kiss with this one girl, and then I had to leave, and it was all horrible, and, Casablanca, and it was just a horrible state of affairs. And I was also pretty emotional as a kid, about as emotional as I am now. There are still a lot of things that I won't do. I won't think about, I won't talk about, I won't, movies I won't watch because I'll start to cry. And, but I remember in my diary, and I was 13 and we were leaving Sicily, and I was irate. I was pissed off. I was upset. I was sad. I was crying. I mean, I didn't want to go back to Ohio. I remember thinking, Ohio is crap. I hate Ohio. I don't want to go back to Ohio. There's nothing there for me. I like my family. I love my family, but there's, the friends, that's the other thing, is that everybody kind of becomes slightly disposable. So even though you hate leaving friends behind, you also know that, unless you can stay in one place, you don't really care about going back to old friends. I would say for a year or two after we left Sicily, had somebody come up to me and said, or had my mom and dad come to me and said, we're all going back to Sicily, and everyone that was there is getting assigned back there, and we're all going to live there for the next 10 years. I would have been all about it. That would have been awesome, because the kids that I knew then were great kids. I still remember a lot of them, and I have never been able to find any of them on Facebook or elsewhere. And I don't know, maybe someday, eventually, if I get famous enough, they'll come find me and try and get some money out of me. And if nothing else, I'll be able to catch up with them, and maybe I'll buy them a beer or something. But I don't remember what the point of this was. Being privileged, living in Europe as a kid. So my dad, I really think that my dad looked around and he just said he didn't want us to grow up in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, and end up as a bunch of, rednecks. I can only imagine what I would have turned into if I would have stayed in Ohio my whole life, because when I moved back to Ohio, when we moved back when I was in 8th grade, I pretty much stayed there until the year 2000. So that was when I was thinking 15 years ago, where was I? And 15 years ago, I was living in a small town in Ohio, and I was working at somewhere for $5 an hour, $5.50, which I don't think minimum wage was. I think minimum wage was $5 or $5.25 or something like that at the time, and in Ohio. And so then, let's see what else was going on. I was just kind of partying. I was pretty much doing whatever, and not a lot of anything. And I enjoyed it. I mean, I did some college around that time, and like I said, I dropped out. And I dropped out of college 3 times. I tried college 3 times. Once at Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That was in fall of 1996. And I quit after that semester. I actually just withdrew at the end of that first semester. And I said, nope, that's it, I'm done. I moved back to Ohio. At which point I was living with my grandparents. And I tried to go to a community college. And the community college worked out pretty well the first couple of quarters. I actually made it on Dean's List. Again, I was an intelligent person. I still consider myself intelligent. I just am not as knowledgeable as I would have liked to have been. And definitely not as knowledgeable in any specific subject than I would like to be. I've mentioned it before in other places and here as well, just kind of a jack of all trades. And it's nice because I know a little bit about so many different things. I can carry on conversations and I can learn things, because when I do talk to someone about something and something that they're passionate about and something that they understand a lot about, or something that they've been educated about, then because I read a fair amount of, online articles and Wikipedia articles and this and that and the other, and I do kind of try to stay on top of things with what's going on, I can usually learn something from them without being completely lost. It's not you're starting from scratch. I mean, if someone walks up to me and starts talking to me about molecular biology, I might be able to keep up with them a little bit, but I definitely would be one of those opportunities where I'd be like, you know what, I don't even know what the hell you're talking about, but keep on going, because I'm sure I'll learn something interesting. And that's why I like about people that have specialized, is that people that have specialized in that type of, in anything, generally speaking, if they're talking to me, that means that they've had to leave their comfort zone. If a molecular biologist is standing there talking to Spencer, that means that they are not in the lab, because Spencer doesn't go to the labs. And, so that also means that there's another part of them. There's that social aspect of them, and that the Renaissance man kind of mentality of essentially, it's just I like to know that I know a lot about a lot of things, or I'm sorry, I know a little bit about a lot of things, because it just makes conversations so much better. It makes conversations more interesting, and all of those tangents that you start to go on, especially if you're talking to another person that isn't a specialist in any way, you go all over the place, and that's how great conversations are born, and that's how great friendships are born, I think, too. Most of my best friends over the years have been people that don't have a singular focus. They don't have one thing that they spend all of their time doing or all of their time thinking about. And a lot of times when someone has a hobby or something along those lines, that I've had this happen with friends where they have found something that they really, really enjoy. And as time went by, it got to the point where they continued to enjoy it, and they immersed themselves in that hobby so much that I kind of lost track of I lost track of the friend that I had, because it's no longer a conversation about whatever. It's now a conversation simply about their hobby and them trying to get you into their hobby because they enjoy it so much. But unless you have you have to start with at least a little bit of interest. And so an example that I'm thinking of is I have a friend who, I had a friend who really got into piloting. And after a time, that just turned into every single conversation was about pilot license and commercial pilot license and stuff that was going, what the future plan was going to be, and all this, that, and the other. And it just it got to the point where I just realized I don't have this desire. I have no desire whatsoever to become a pilot. I don't want to. I don't really even want to go up. So I'm perfectly fine here on the ground. I mean, it's cool and it's awesome that you found something that you really enjoy, and we can talk about it, but can we please talk about other things as well? And it just kind of got to the point where, there were some other things that were going on with that friendship and with everything else that was going on with that entire group of friends that caused things to fall apart. But nonetheless, the point is that I really enjoy people that spend a lot of time talking about a lot of different things. And I think that that's one of the things that I've found myself, like the whole atheism aspect. I've been an atheist for 2 years, and I now spend at least an hour recording every 2 weeks, just doing this podcast. And that doesn't count all of the time that I spend listening to other podcasts, creating YouTube videos, watching YouTube videos, reading books about atheism and religion, reading through the Bible again more than I ever did before, which I will do a quick shout out to the Skeptics Annotated Bible. I got my copy of that, I want to say about a month ago, and it's awesome reading through it. I hate the King James version because it's full of typos, and it's crap, the these and the thous and the arts and the shouts and all that crap. I don't find that it flows at all. But that's not really the point of the Skeptics Annotated Bible, so it doesn't really matter. If you know the Bible at all, then you kind of can generally jump to a part that you want to find out more about. And the Skeptics Annotated Bible has a whole side thing. So it's kind of like the NIV, the Student Bible, which is the Bible that I used. And I need to look it up. If anybody knows off the top of their head, let me know via email or however. I've heard some criticisms of NIV, saying that the NIV was actually extremely inaccurate when it comes to compared to the original Hebrew and Greek. So if that's true, I'd kind of like to know, and I'll probably look it up later on just to see if that's the truth or not. And I think that the NIV's undergone a couple of different modifications, redos, whatever you want to call it. My mom sent me, I think it's called The Gospel, and it's the New American Standard. Is that what it is? It's the one where it's all in real speech, just like 20th century speech, but still based on, going back to the Greek. And I think the one that I have is just the New Testament, and doesn't have the Old Testament in there. Maybe Psalms and Proverbs. Anyway, Skeptics Annotated Bible. Go pick one up. I think it's $39.95 plus tax. So it's a little bit on the higher side when it's something that you can get online, but it's awesome quality. It's a bound book. It's leather. I mean, it's really nice. If you have the money and you want a nice study Bible that points out the absurdities and the it's basically, it has little comments on the side saying, wait, what? So like a question mark, like for confusing things, and it'll say, well, this verse says that, God is love, and then over on the side it'll say, well, this verse says God is love, but then if you jump over to whatever Hebrews 12:13, which I have no idea what that says, but Hebrews 12:13, then it says that God is judgment or something like that. So it goes through the entire Bible that way and points out all of the murder and the inconsistencies and the what am I even trying to contradictions. That's the word I've been trying to search for the last 30 seconds. So it goes through all of that. I would open it up and I would read you something, but I'm using it actually as part of my mic stand. So I figure if I can't open it up and use it, I'll at least use it to hold my mic in place. And if I move my mic, this new mic is extremely sensitive. I actually spent a good 20 or 30 minutes troubleshooting it when I first got it. I thought I had a defective one. And every time I hit record, it was just picking up this horrible, just buzzing, vibrating sound that I couldn't figure it out. I thought it was feedback, so I turned off my speakers and faced my speakers in other directions, and I couldn't figure it out, and it was driving me nuts. And then finally, I realized that the only thing that was actually happening was my computer case was sitting against my table, and the computer fans, the spinning fans inside my computer case against the legs of my table were causing a vibration in the table this microphone was picking up and turning into just a wind tunnel. I mean, it was horrible. So seriously, I moved my computer case an inch away from the legs of the table, and boom, everything was nice and quiet, and the quality of this mic seems to be really good. And I don't know, nobody's complained about it, at least. I do really want to put a little bit more time and money into making kind of a box of sorts. I've seen a lot of people in their setups and, noise absorption, that sort of thing. And I kind of want to get into being as professional as possible without spending, $1,200 on making a soundproof booth or something like that. So I don't want to go insane. I've already spent well over $200+ on microphones, just trying to find one that I really like. And so far, I really like this new one, but who knows how long that's going to last before I say, nope, I need to go and buy a new one. I tend to do that a lot, and it's kind of silly, but nonetheless. So because of the last podcast, I spent a little bit too much time at the beginning apologizing for not having anything and saying, I'm sorry I didn't have anything going on and that sort of thing. I really wanted to do a little bit more research on at least something this week. And first of all, I know I just said that, and now I'm going to go off on a tangent again. I'm going to back up just a little bit. And the whole conversation about 15 years ago, what I did was that when I thought about what I had done where I was 15 years ago, because it wasn't that I was having a pity party for myself. I wasn't feeling sorry for myself, and I wasn't saying, God, religion's just sucked my life out of me, and 15 years ago I was stuck in it, and I just got free 2 years ago, and my life's so much better now, which it is. But 15 years ago, I was pretty much just kind of doing nothing. I was headed nowhere. I wasn't doing anything. In 1998, I really had no plans. I had no idea what I was going to do. I mean, I enjoyed working at the video store. I enjoyed being promiscuous, for lack of a better word, and drinking all the time and, doing whatever. And I didn't really do a lot of drugs. I never could really get into it. Smoked some pot, and that was pretty much about it. I don't know. I never really enjoyed any of it. So would I do drugs now? Maybe. I'd probably smoke some pot if somebody said, here, have some pot. And I'd be like, thanks. And then I'd be like, okay, now what? And that would be it. I'd be fine with it. I haven't smoked in over a year. Yeah. All right. So then I jumped forward 5 years from 15 years ago. I was like, okay, where was I 10 years ago? And in 2003, I was living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and exactly 10 years ago right now, I was employed. I had a good job. Didn't pay a whole lot, but I didn't need a whole lot because Tulsa, Oklahoma is kind of a cheap place to live. I had a really nice condo when I first moved to Tulsa in 2000, and I think it was $550 a month it was a really nice place. I mean, it wasn't quality, it was like size-wise, it was really nice, and it was in a, owned section. I don't know. It was nice. And then I ended up in just a shithole, and it was something like $350 a month. But again, $350 a month compared to what I pay here in Seattle, $350 a month for essentially the same thing that I have now is awesome, because I pay more than that now, much more than that, more than double that now, just for a 1-bedroom apartment. But anyway, still didn't really have any plans. Like, I had no real clue. I had moved back to Oklahoma because I really wanted to do something with my life, and I wanted to go somewhere, and I wanted to do something crazy. I wanted to chase some dreams. And I moved back to Oklahoma because I really wanted to go to LA. I wanted to go to Hollywood. I wanted to become an actor or a screenplay writer. Screenwriter. Yeah. Screenwriter is the word I was going for there. A screenwriter, director, I wanted to get into the movies. I thought that would be the coolest thing in the world, to get into the movies. And I was already, I was still writing in my journal and that kind of thing. And I was trying to do poetry night and writing short stories and all that kind of stuff. And, some of it was okay. Some of it was just horrible. And, but nonetheless, I was starting to get there, it's like, okay, it took me 5 years, but I was like, okay, let's go do something. I want to go to Hollywood. And I was like, okay, Hollywood's a big jump. Let's not go to Hollywood quite yet. Let's go to Oklahoma, because I know Oklahoma, because I had lived in Tulsa when I was in college in Tulsa. Plus my sisters lived there. So it was kind of like, if everything fell apart, I would have some sort of support. My parents were in Washington, D.C., or they were in Iceland at the time. I'm not really sure which. Washington, D.C. Yeah, so my parents were in D.C., and so moving out to Oklahoma was a big step too. I mean, it's like, okay, no, Tulsa, Oklahoma is not a big city, but it's bigger than Podunk Nowhere, Ohio. So it's like, okay, this will help me get acclimated to being around a lot of people. And it all kind of fell apart towards the end because I don't know, I think I realized that whole self-confidence thing kind of fell apart again, like it always does. And I thought, I'm not good enough. I'm not attractive enough. I'm not talented enough. I am not attractive enough. And I can't, I was having a really hard time actually writing. Writing stories is not my forte. I am not very good at doing stories at all. Even my short stories are really weird. They're almost, I don't even know what it's gonna, I can't really explain it. I have one about like the end of the world, and it's all poetic and everything. I mean, it's a story, but it's poetic, and it's like, okay, come on, make up your mind. Do you want to write a poem or do you want to write a story? And I tried to write a funny story about a meteor landing in my backyard, and killing my dog. And I mean, that was actually got some laughs, but I couldn't ever finish it. I wrote for a while, and I was like, I don't know where to take this story. I just can't finish this story. So anyway, after a while, I just kind of realized, okay, Hollywood's not for me. This isn't what I want to do. If I want to make movies or do that kind of thing, I should just go and make movies and or act and just make them on my own, and, do Sundance and do the independent arts. And that was around Sundance Film Channel. Yeah, it was the Sundance Film Channel years, and I think it was called, what was it? Ben Affleck and Matt Damon did that project, not Project Greenlight, because that's Steam's game thing, but something like that. Anyway, it was that indie movie period of the late 90s, early 2000s, where everybody was talking about the next great indie hit. It was all about the independent films. And I think that was 97. So then I jumped forward 5 years. So all kinds of things that went wrong, horribly wrong in Oklahoma, that had me run out of Oklahoma at the end of 2003. Just get me the hell out of here. I don't want to have anything to do with this place. I literally flipped a coin, and it was going to be either Seattle or Denver. I didn't care which, and Seattle got the coin flip, and I was kind of glad because I really wanted to go to Seattle. I kind of wanted to go to Denver, but Denver wasn't far enough away from Tulsa, and I knew that what would end up happening, because I was still in my angry stage and still kind of had some problems with my family, still didn't really care for my family, didn't like talking to my family, and surely did not like showing any affection to my family. I just knew that what was going to happen was I was going to end up having to drive back to Oklahoma every time there was any kind of family get-together, be it Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever it may be, because it was going to be the in-between. It's like, okay, well, Spencer now lives up in Denver, and Mom and Dad are going to drive in from Ohio or Washington, D.C. or wherever, so we'll just everybody drive, everybody make the sacrifice, except for everybody that lives in Tulsa. So, as it has stood, every Christmas that I've lived in Seattle, which since I first moved up here in 2004, I lived here from 2004 until 2010, and then I was, so what is that, 6 years, and I've been back now for 2 years. So we'll say about 8 Christmases, 8 Thanksgivings, etc., etc. I have gone to Oklahoma once, and that was actually, I didn't go back to Oklahoma while I lived in Tulsa. I actually while I lived in Seattle, I went back to Oklahoma one Christmas when I was living back with my mom and dad in Ohio. The one Christmas that I was back there. Is that right? Was I only back there for one Christmas? I was there a year and a half. Yeah. So we went to Oklahoma that year. So anyway, but I haven't been back to Oklahoma other than that one trip 3 years ago, I want to say. Just because there's nothing there for me. I mean, my sisters live there and my nieces and nephews live there. And, you know, I'm a lot better off with my family. I mean, I actually care about my family a lot now. I don't do much for them and I don't do much with them, but that's mostly just because, you know, as families, the bond that I have with my family is blood more than friendship. And it's kind of always been that way. And I've got one sister that I don't respect at all, and I don't like at all. And I think that she is, I don't know. I don't just want to talk trash about her, but she's so religious that even when I still believed in God, even when I was still considered myself religious, I always looked at her and I was just like, you're nuts, you're crazy. It's like, you are the definition of a cult member. You believe all of this stuff so fervently that you cannot go a moment of your day without thinking about it. I mean, everything was, Jesus is helping me button my button. Jesus is helping me button my second button. I mean, she's not that crazy, but I'm just trying to get you to understand just how religious that sister is. The other sister's a lot more realistic. I've just found this out. She doesn't even go to church anymore. Hasn't been to church in a couple of years. And I tried when I talk to her, because I still do talk to her, usually just on, Google Chat or something like that. I usually try and kind of just slip something in. The last time we were talking, she said something about, what was she talking about? Was it Jethro, I think? Or no. It was Ham, Shem, and Japheth, the 3 sons of Noah. And I knew exactly what she was talking about, but I decided to jack with it anyway. And so I said, wait, is that the one that sacrificed his daughter to God? And her response was, what? What are you talking about? I said, oh, no, wait, I think that was Jephthah, not Japheth, or Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Japheth, whatever. Anyway, Jephthah. And so I think, honestly, I think she may or may not. I don't know. Maybe she out of sight, out of mind. If I don't read it, I don't have to deal with it. But, it's just like what they always used to tell us to do when we were Christians, which is just planting those seeds and planting the seed of doubt. And in my opinion, planting the seed of doubt is so much better because it helps people think. I mean, if I could sum up everything that I'm trying to do with this podcast, with my YouTube channel, with the conversations that I have with other people, with my conversations on the internet, with everything. And no, I haven't come out to my family yet. My family doesn't know that I'm an atheist, and that's something that does bother me, but I don't let it bother me a lot because I know that there are reasons for it. There are reasons why I haven't come out to my family. And number one, I don't feel that I have to justify that to anyone. Recently, people have asked me that question and said, what are you afraid of? What is it that why can't you just grow some balls and tell your family how you feel and what you believe? And the answer to it is because it's so much more complex than that. And because I know my family. The people that ask that question don't know my family, or they're the kinds of people, because being an atheist doesn't mean that you're a humanitarian, and it doesn't mean that you actually give a shit. But there are a lot of people that do not give a shit. And it's not, I don't give a shit if people know that I'm an atheist because I'm proud to be an atheist. It's, I don't give a shit what people think, period. And they're the kinds of people that are assholes. We all know that person. It's like, I admire the people that just don't give a shit and just say what's on their mind. But I also see the way that a lot of those people are looked at by other people. I see the way that I look at those kinds of people, and I find them brash and irritating more than anything, because they do not take anyone else's feelings or thoughts into consideration. And no, you can't always, but you can at least try. I don't know if it's not so much empathy that they lack as it's just tact. I try to be somewhat tactful. And if I bring up an objection about, religion or something like that around my family, I don't say, religion's a bunch of bullshit and I don't believe any of it anymore and you guys are silly for believing any of that shit anymore. What's wrong with you? I would never do that, because that's just, it's rude. I mean, it's rude and inconsiderate to them. And I know my family. My dad would probably sit there and roll his eyes and say, whatever, you're going through a phase, because that's my dad, generally speaking. Even though, like I said, he has started to view me a little bit more as an adult and a little bit less as his son. And as the years have gone by, their religion has kind of morphed into this weird thing. They're actually the ones that mentioned there's the possibility that, that reincarnation is true. Based on God, who knows what. Probably somebody somewhere read some verse and translated it from, French into Swahili and back into Yiddish, and then put it into English, and then dumped it into Google Translate and translated it into Chinese, and then read it upside down, and it said something about reincarnation being reality. But again, there's so much apologetics, and there's so much, I couldn't even imagine if I was a pastor, because everyone's heard it all. We've heard it all so many times. It's like, how many times do you really want to go to church if every time you go to church, you're just going to hear the story of Jesus all over again? I mean, it would be boring. And so as time goes by, you eventually start going, well, if we interpret this way, it means that when dogs die, they actually go to heaven. So when I had one of my dogs die a couple of years ago, I used to have 2 dogs, and they're both dead now. But when I had the first one die, my mom said that, she heard something from some pastor somewhere that was preaching that, dogs have souls, and that, or not necessarily that dogs have souls, but that dogs go to heaven, which I don't know how they don't, or how they go to heaven if they don't have souls, but, and it was, based on, I don't even remember what verse, and I'm sure you could probably do an internet search and find someone somewhere that says that these verses back up the belief that dogs go to heaven. And I understand why. I mean, I get it. People want to have the things in the world that make them happy. They really want the life in heaven to be as close to a perfect life on earth as is possible. And in order to have that perfect life in heaven, you have to have some of the things that you had in your life, because you don't lose all of who you are. You got the mind, body, spirit, triality. I don't know what that's called. I know there's the whole mind and body duality that pretty much is no longer viewed as valid, because I mean, essentially, we've gotten to the point where we believe that the mind is simply a product of the brain. And because the mind is a product of the brain, then you kill the brain, you kill the mind. There's nothing separate. There is no soul. There is no mind independent of the body, because in order for the mind to not be physical, then the mind could not have any impact on the physical, because physical must be interacting with physical, according to empirical evidence and science. And so it's kind of like the question of, if God intervenes in the natural world, but intervenes in a way that is undetectable, then you can't say that God actually intervenes with the world, because an unnatural or a supernatural thing interacting with the natural world is impossible, because there is natural phenomena that is necessary for something to have changed. There has to be a change of state, or a change of something in the physical and in the natural, that the supernatural would have to be able to affect. And if the supernatural can affect the natural, then the supernatural is no longer supernatural. The supernatural is now natural. Is that too confusing, or am I missing something in that argument? But a God that makes a supernatural God that affects the world in supernatural ways and leaves no trace is indistinguishable from a God that isn't there. And I'm paraphrasing Tracy Harris from Atheist Experience on that one, because that was one of her best points of all that. I loved it. It was the episode where she was using the jar of dice, and it was it was 3 jars. There was a jar with nothing in it, a jar that was empty, and a jar full of dice. And they said one jar is full of nothing, and the other jar is full of absolutely nothing. And, it was a good one. I don't remember what episode it was, but if you listen to or watch the Atheist Experience, go find the one with the dice. Tracy Harris and Matt Dillahunty and the dice. It was hilarious. And good. I mean, it shut down the argument. It was like, okay, your argument is bullshit, and here's why. So yeah, and that was the comparison. So anyway, I have no idea what the hell I was talking about. I got so carried away on that one, but that was fun. Which that's the point of this, right? You guys are having fun listening to me, and I'm having fun talking to you guys. So yeah. And I've explained this before. I use the term "you guys" as an all-inclusive, non-sexist, non-masculine way. So I'm not apologizing for using it. I'm simply explaining why I use the term "guys." I know that there are females out there, and I appreciate your listenership. Listenership? I'm making up words again. So, yeah. 5 years ago, that's where we're going with this. 5 years ago, I was working at the same company that I'm working for now in Seattle, and I was actually doing really well, and I had made a lot of strides. I mean, I was coming up in the world. Monetarily speaking, I bought a car around that time. First time I ever bought a car that wasn't just a junker that I found on Craigslist for $900 and drove it until it fell apart, and bought another one for $900 and started the process all over again. And I'm trying to remember if I had a girlfriend at that point or if I had just broken up with one. That's usually how my relationship stories go. I had a girlfriend at some time, and then we broke up. And that just kind of keeps on going. I'm not currently really in a relationship right now. The relationship that I think I talked about before is... it's changed. The nature of the relationship has changed, and it's good. It's in a good way. So yeah. So 5 years ago, things were looking good. And since coming back to Seattle 2 years ago, not even 2 years ago, I've only been back to Seattle for a year and a half, which is kind of amazing to me, because number one, I got a job back at the same company that I was working for. And while I took a job that was at a lower level than I was before I left, 6-7 months later, after I started, I was actually promoted back to the same position that I was in before I left, and given more money for doing it. And now there's rumors and speculation that there's all kinds of things that are going on in my department, and I may end up with yet another job, which would be another step up. And so, it's kind of, it's like, it sucks because I took a whole year and a half away from the company. And during that time, a lot of people did move into other roles, and it, coming back, it's just kind of, oh man, those people that used to be, I'm just going to use these terms loosely, but those people that used to be under me are now over me. And, those people that used to be my peers are now off in other departments doing other things that are so much cooler than what I am doing now. And it kind of sucks because they had that year and a half. But then, and I may have talked about it a little bit, I would have to go back and listen, but essentially the year and a half that I took off when I went back to Ohio was actually really necessary. It wasn't something that I had a whole lot of choice. I really needed to do it, and I was falling apart emotionally and mentally, and if I hadn't done it, then things just probably would have fallen apart too really, really bad. But anyway, it's just really nice. I mean, like I said, I'm back, and things are better than they were even before. And I think it's awesome. And I'm really glad that things are working out well for me. And as the new things happen, as the promotions at work and taking on new responsibilities and new roles at work and that sort of thing, adjusting everything, just doing different stuff and aiming towards different goals than I had before. It has helped a lot with, again, I talk a lot about self-worth and confidence and self-confidence, and that's because, well, first of all, I lack a lot of it. And I think that a lot of us lack that because we don't look at the small victories in our life and take pride in those small victories. And because we're not taking pride in the small victories, we kind of get stuck forgetting that the small victories are really, really important, because the small victories are the things that we can grab onto every single day. Me getting a promotion 6 months after I start at, my old company, I look at it and I'm like, well, it's like it was the job I was doing before. I really should have gotten it. If I hadn't gotten it, it would have been horrible. So, whatever, no big deal. But when I really stop and think about it, it's like, you know what? They still have faith in me. They still believe that I'm good at the job. And they still believe that I can accomplish the goals. And I performed well enough in the interview process because it wasn't just handed to me. I still had to go through the interview process. And when I went through the interview process, I did a good job. I answered the questions. I gave them the answers that they wanted to hear, but they were also honest answers, because I did want to kind of get my life back on track. I wanted to say, okay, yeah, I was gone for a year and a half and I've been back for only 6 months, but you know what? I can do this job again. Just give me a chance. Here we go. So building up on those small victories, it's kind of like this other change that may happen over the course of the next week or two, putting me into a new position. There's going to be some drawbacks. Most likely it would be an overnight shift, probably 4 10s, and that would be great because then I only have to go overnight for 4 nights a week. But that also kind of sucks. But looking at it and saying, this is something that I grabbed onto. This is something I grabbed by the horns and said, I want to succeed in my career and I want to find a career. It's a positive for me. And grabbing onto those small positives is something that I think is really important. Not just for me, but for everybody. So about a week ago, I thought about a subject that I really wanted to talk about. Mostly because I had been engaged in a conversation with a couple of different people concerning memory and emotions, and this is kind of my serious subject of this podcast, and it got me thinking that I really needed to do a little bit more research into it, because I have always been of the understanding and of the impression that you kind of have two sets of memories in your head. One of them is the factual and the actual nature of memory, and the other is the emotional response. The emotional memories, how you felt during a thing. And interestingly enough, I had never looked it up to see if that was even right. And maybe I read it somewhere when I was younger. Maybe I actually did come up with this one on my own. But interestingly enough, a lot of other people have also looked into this. And it turns out that we actually, generally, humans do have two independent memory systems. They interact when you have emotion and when you have memory. So the two portions of your brain that the two portions of your brain that are involved mostly with memory are the amygdala and the hippocampal complex. And I'm not going to say that I understand a whole lot of this, but it's my understanding and my impression that the amygdala and the hippocampal complex are kind of the early parts. They're the primitive parts of your brain. I guess part of the reptile brain that we still have through evolution. And the amygdala tends to, I may get this a little bit different, I may get it a little mixed up, but I read a lot about this and it all got confused once I actually put it all together in my head. But essentially, the amygdala looks at it and says, okay, here is the emotion that's associated with this event, and the hippocampal says, here is the event that occurred. And so the amygdala says, here's my emotional reaction. Hippocampal says, here's what actually was happening. Here's what happened, not the emotion. And that the interesting thing is that if you scar either the amygdala or the hippocampal, you can actually reach a point where the emotional response is not what it should be. An example that they used in the paper that I read, and here the paper that I read, and pretty short, but this was the main one that I read that I found was called Human Emotion and Memory, Interactions of the Amygdala and Hippocampal Complex by Elizabeth A. Phelps. Basically, she went through a lot of other studies and put it all together into kind of a brief. It's 4 or 5 pages on PDF. So if you do a search for that, you should be able to see it and read it. And it's pretty quick. And it was just really interesting to me because of the fact that emotions do play a big role in what we remember, because there is the emotional response, and because of your emotional response, like in times of fear or in times of pain or in times of love or any other strong emotion that you can think of. Fear is the one that they use the most, and I think that fear is probably one of the strongest emotions that we as humans have, because it's evolutionarily beneficial to react when afraid. So those are kind of the things that really burn into your memory. I know that in my mind, one of my earliest memories, I actually remember sneaking out of the house with a chicken wing. No, it's not a chicken wing, chicken leg, and sitting on the stairs. Like, it was nighttime. I was a kid. Like, I mean, I don't know, 3, we'll say, maybe 4, probably 3. And I remember just taking a chicken wing, going outside and sitting on the steps and eating it in the dark. And I just remember that. And that's one of the earliest memories. I don't know why that one sticks in my head, because I don't remember any emotions around that time, other than maybe there was a little bit of fear that was involved in that because I was walking outside in the dark and I was, a kid. Another time around the same age, walking down an alleyway while it was snowing. And I remember it just being deafeningly quiet. Just the way that it is when the snow falls down and everything just is completely and totally quiet, and all you can hear is the snow crunching under your feet because everything's muffled. And when you live in a village in rural Ohio, that tends to be what happens. There's not a whole lot of sound there anyway. The other memories that I really remember, the ones that really, really stick with me, are actually ones of being afraid. I remember jumping over the back of the couch when dinner was ready, and I remember my dad yelling at me, and I can remember exactly what his face looked like, and I remember what I did, and I was probably 6. Another really, really vivid memory was another one of my dad yelling at me. It didn't happen a lot, and even though I was spanked as a kid, I don't view what my parents did as abuse. I probably will never spank any kids that I have, if I ever have any, but nonetheless, I don't really. That's beside the point. But anyway, this one, and it wasn't even a memory of being spanked. It was I was mowing the lawn. That was one of my jobs as a kid, and we had a dog at the time. One of the few times that we had a dog when we were kids, and I don't think I picked up the dog poop, and I think it just kept running over the dog poop with the lawnmower. And it wasn't like it was splattering out the side, and I was launching dog nuggets all over the yard. It was just, I was basically just running over with the tires or the wheels on the lawnmower, and so it was just kind of getting mushed into the grass. And and I'm sitting on top of the washing machine, and I'm just kind of sitting there like, oh, I feel bad. Dad's yelling at me, and that pissed my dad off. My dad got frustrated every time I did that, and so he slammed his hand down on the top of the dryer, which, I'll say I was 10 at this point. That scared the shit out of me, because the sound of those sheet metal dryers, when you slam your hand down on top of one of those things, oh my God. You might as well set off a gun right in front of my face, because it scared me. I started crying. My dad was like, I'm sorry, and he's hugging me, and he's just like, I'm sorry, I overreacted, that kind of stuff. It's like, those are the vivid memories that I remember. Other vivid memories, I was a sleepwalker when I was a kid, and one time I actually woke up. I was, again, about 11 years old. I woke up and I walked out the front door, middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, unlocked the front door, walked out the front door, walked 3 houses down to where my pastor lived, which is also where my friend lived, and knocked on the door until he opened the door, had a conversation with him, turned around and walked home. Didn't wake up until I actually got back to my house. But I remember it all. I remember the entire walk, the entire conversation, and everything, even though I wasn't aware that I was doing it. So, yeah, that was interesting. But anyway, reading up about this and reading that the memory and emotion and emotional memories and the actual memories themselves are completely and totally linked in our brains, and that they've actually used fMRI to view how this works and to see how this works and to see the interaction between the amygdala and the hippocampal complex. It was amazing to me, because it's like, holy shit, all these years I've been talking about these two separate sets of emotion, and it turns out that is actually true, and that they affect each other. And if there's damage to one, then sometimes the emotional memories don't stick, and so you can remember the scariest thing but not have any emotional response to it, because there's scarring on the hippocampal or the hippocampus somewhere, and I might get that backwards, but essentially the two of them working in concert create your entire set of memories, and those entire set of memories involves what actually happens in your emotional response to them. And if there's damage to one or the other, then you could just remember the emotions but not what really happened, or you can remember what happened but not really the emotions. And if it's working okay, then you can remember both, and they are distinct. So it's really cool to kind of have verification of that. But how this all works into atheism and religion and everything is, religion, anybody that's ever gone to like a Pentecostal or an evangelical fundamentalist Christian church service knows that the praise and worship session of the church service is all about emotion. Everything is opening up your heart and opening up your mind and letting, the Holy Spirit take over your body and fill you with Jesus's love and God's love. And you raise your hands to the Heavenly Father, and, the music, and it's all just kind of put you in a bit of a trance and create emotions. And, the fire and brimstone, it's the same thing. It's to scare the shit out of you. You go to a crazy Baptist sermon and they start preaching fire and brimstone, and you're scared and you're scared and you're scared, and it puts you in an emotionally vulnerable state. And because you're emotionally vulnerable, then again, this is where it kind of goes back to that whole emotional versus actual memory. It's like, if the two of them are working in concert in order to create strong memories, then the reason why a lot of people get locked into things and that's the thing, is that the people that, like the praise and worship sessions that I was always a part of, were a positive emotional. It was, Jesus was here to help you with your troubles, and, cast all your cares upon him, for he cares for you. And, it's like, why do I remember all of this stuff? I don't remember all of this stuff because I heard it so many times. Although I did hear it tons of times, I remember the majority of this because in my opinion, and based on the research that I've read about this, putting you in that emotionally vulnerable state creates this set of memories, that the things that occur to you and the things that happen when you're caught up in the moment, when you're caught up in the emotional state of giving away your sovereignty to someone else and something else, and a delusion in this case, is you create this memory set, so that you look at it like indoctrination. Train up a child in the way that he will go, and he will never part from those ways. I mean, that's it right there. I mean, if you can emotionally manipulate children into believing everything that you tell them by putting them into an emotionally vulnerable state, and then filling their heads with memories, and filling their heads with words, and filling their heads with, platitudes and religious dogma, then chances are they're not going to break out of it, because those emotions evolutionarily are beneficial to the continuation of the beliefs. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing when science finally starts to answer the questions. I know that science has been answering the questions that religion has been asking for years and years. And it drives me nuts to see the people that ignore that the answers are there. They'll ask the question, you'll give them the answer, and they'll just ask the question all over again and say, well, nobody's answered the question, or I don't think that answer is accurate. And so I'm going to ignore the fact that you've answered my question and continue to ask the question to other people. It drives me nuts. But knowing that science can help us answer the questions as to why things exist and why things persist, evolutionarily speaking, religion probably has had a lot of benefits for our forefathers and foremothers and forebears. I'm sure that it did. It helped create a society. It helped create trust and faith between each other. It had an evolutionarily beneficial, whatever the word is that I'm going for, evolutionary benefit. But I think we finally moved beyond it, because we are starting to answer the questions as to why it is, and we can find other common ground that doesn't require mass delusion. And it doesn't require magic underwear or magic Kool-Aid or anything along those lines. So, well, thanks everybody. I did want to take a quick moment and do a shout out of sorts. There is a YouTube channel that they are going to switch to an audio podcast, so I just want you guys to keep an eye out for it. They said that they're going to start doing it soon. So keep searching on iTunes or just the internet or wherever, and I'll give you an update as soon as they have it posted. But The Bible Reloaded, they are currently on YouTube, so check them out if you want to listen to them. They're basically reading through the Bible and making fun of it. It's absolutely hilarious. Also, they cuss a lot, so if you don't like that, then tough shit. Right. Okay, everybody, I hope that you are having a wonderful Sunday or whatever day it is that you are listening to this on, and I will see you all in 2 weeks. Take care, everybody.